go in the woods," I yelled, but nobody responded. Of course, any who heard me would just assume I was talking about not cheating at the game, but I was sincerely worried about that person wandering around in them. Of course, now I had a flashlight of my own, so I thought I should go and see if I can find out who that was, just to make myself feel better. I went back behind the house I'd come from, and a bunch of laughing shadows scampered out of sight into neighboring yards. I ignored them and headed straight for the trees. I couldn't see any other light in there, so I thought, maybe he went home. I didn't know if it was a man or a woman, but I didn't imagine any women trudging through the woods at night. I went about playing the game again, albeit anxious because of the lingering thought that there was someone wandering in the woods who didn't seem to be playing the game with us. I ran across the street and chased people through the backyards there, but after a while, I found the lots empty and realized that they must have gone back across the street. I ran back over and was exploring the Beach's backyard. Mrs. Beach had a clothesline with a bunch of drying sheets on it, and her daughter Charlotte liked to hide among the linens and stay close to home in case she got too scared of the dark. She was only a year younger than me. I thought I heard something at the tree line, so I went over and was waving the flashlight around into the woods. "Stay out of the woods," I remember yelling. I waved the flashlight back and forth a couple more passes, then saw someone off in the distance. I held the light on whoever it was. They were about half a job into the woods, hard to make out, but it looked to me like Charlotte. Charlotte had brown hair that her mother insisted on keeping shoulder length. We always dressed dark for flashlight tag, and Charlotte liked to wear this deep purple sweatshirt, so it was usually easy to tell when you had found her. "Charlotte, I see you," I yelled. She just stood there. I continued to hold the light on her and call her name, but she didn't seem to move. She stood there, partially obscured by a tree, and looked at me. The distance between us was enough that I couldn't see if she was blinking or not, but she had her head propped at an angle, like she was looking around the trunk at me, with her mouth hanging slightly open. Every now and then, she sort of twitched or squirmed. It was a real freaky kind of movement. "Charlotte, come out of there," I yelled. "Everybody, Charlotte's it, but she won't come out of the woods." Some kids, including my friend Dustin, appeared behind me and started joining in my yell for Charlotte to come out. "Do you see her?" I asked. "Yeah, she's over behind that tree." "Charlotte, get over here," Dustin said. But she wouldn't come. "Charlotte, are you okay? Get over here, dummy." Charlotte seemed to stand up straighter and then disappear behind the tree. We could hear movement, but it seemed to be going away rather than toward us. Dustin started shouting Charlotte's name again and trudging into the woods after her, but I grabbed him and gave him the flashlight to take with him. I was scared again because this all seemed surreal. I went to Charlotte's house and knocked until her father answered. "Mr. Beach, Charlotte won't come out of the woods, and I'm worried about her," I told him. I wasn't sure if he'd take me seriously, but he rolled up his newspaper and disappeared into the closet behind the door for a moment, before returning with a huge flashlight strapped to a car battery. "Show me where she is," he told me. So I led him to the woods and pointed to where I'd seen her. "She was right there," I said, "by a tree, but she wouldn't come out, and she was acting like she was sick or something." A a bunch of the other kids kept calling Charlotte, Charlotte. And I could see Dustin's flashlight beam moving around through the trees. Mr. Beach went in after him. They explored the woods for a good 15 to 20 minutes, and Mr. Beach started getting real angry. We could hear him yelling very loudly for Charlotte, threatening her with all sorts of punishments if she didn't get her ass back in the backyard that instant. The game was over by now, and we kids just stood there in the Beach's backyard among the linens and watched. Dustin came running back out of the bushes with a dead flashlight. Eventually, Mr. Beach came back out of the woods. "Game over, kids," he said. "Get inside. Ask your folks if they can help me and to bring flashlights." We all ran back home. My dad went out with 3 different flashlights. My mother went and turned on all the lights in the back rooms and opened the curtains and shades to help illuminate the backyard. I sat on the couch, all upset, and she eventually came back and hugged me and sat with me while I told her about the person with the flashlight chasing me and how I thought maybe Charlotte had run into him. Mr. Beach had gone inside and called them to report a missing child. They brought huge lights and did a march through the woods, checking very thoroughly, but didn't find her. My mother told my dad what I told her. He told an officer, and I ended up giving a statement. They went to the house 3 doors down and knocked, but the folks that lived there had been asleep and didn't know who would have been in their backyard. The police asked all up and down the neighborhood, but nobody claimed to know anything. At the other end of the woods, it came to a back road mainly used by logging trucks. They found Charlotte 2 days later, on the other side of the logging road, down an embankment that ended at a stream, stuffed into a drain pipe. Her neck had been broken, and she was apparently stabbed multiple times afterward. My parents wouldn't tell me about it. They thought it would upset me, but Dustin told me all the details at school the next day. It was the most awful thing in our town that had ever happened. The police blocked off the logging road and spent months tracking down loggers and truckers who frequently used it. There was a curfew for months, and we were told not to play flashlight tag anymore. We didn't argue. What leaves me shaking to this day is the memory of Charlotte's face, hanging out from behind the tree, looking at me. Sometimes I wonder if at that moment I had been witnessing her death. And I wonder if that had almost been me.